Sexuality as an identity. Obviously, I think this is misguided, but it would appear that there is some kind of social currency in claiming to be bisexual or asexual or some kind of lifestyle kink, fetish stuff. There's a lot of, I don't know why. It seems like a strange thing to me. To me, this is not something you want to advertise. Perhaps because there's so much bad stuff wrong with me that it's not something I want to talk about with people I don't know. In this case, I'm trying to be extremely honest and brutal about myself. So occasionally, my sexual past will come up, and uh, in all its infamy. uh, but I I don't understand. Like, there's with men, or especially it's mainly young white males. They claim to be bisexual, and they're completely straight. Like, they're not into kissing guys. They're not into sucking dick. They're not into like getting fucked, and I don't understand that. A weird thing about homosexual sex, right? Like sex between a guy and a guy, like there's an inherent power differential. Like if you're sucking dick, you're submissive. That's the way it's going to be seen, right? But two girls don't have that inherent power differential, which is weird. Uh, like they can try and inject it into it, but it's still like something that is artifice. Even if it's like very real, like a situation of real force, it is still something they are having to put into it. Uh, it is not by its nature, is what I'm saying. And with two guys, it is by its nature there is an inherent power differential, or that is going to be the appearance of. Not, I would imagine every homosexual relationship doesn't work that way, but usually someone's the top and someone's the bottom. So, but the currency in it is strange. You have these guys, and I remember asking this dude once. I was like, "You're bisexual, but like I never see you with a dude. You have you ever sucked a dick? No. Have you ever kissed a guy? Kissing a guy is, so in fact, to a lot of dudes, kissing a guy is worse than sucking dick. They are very uncomfortable with this. And so I'm like, so he's like, no. And I'm like, so you went whole hog right off the bat and went straight into anal? He's like, no. And like almost offended. Like the idea of him in a position like that was upsetting to him. It's like, so what about you as bisexual? And I wasn't trying to be a dick and like pull his card on it, because I try to avoid doing stuff like that. I don't think it's productive. But I was, at the time, it was like one of the first times I had come across this, and I had heard this guy claiming to be bisexual over and over and over. So, but it never like manifested in his personality. Like, it was never like, oh, that dude's hot, or oh, I'd like to do this with that guy. Like the things you hear people say when they see someone that's attractive, or someone that is desirable to them for whatever reason. And like with women, or girls, women, depending on how you want to call it, asexual is a big one. And it's funny because at one point I considered myself asexual. And like 17 to maybe like 25, 26, in that range, I would have considered myself asexual. I couldn't be touched by other people. Like if somebody touched my skin, it was like an electric shock, like it made me jump. And at the time, I didn't understand that this was like a severe trauma reaction thing. I just thought there was something wrong with me. And anytime, especially women touch my skin, it would make me like jump off the bed. Some girls I hung out with at the time found it kind of funny, and they'd be like, every time, it doesn't even matter if you're sleeping, if I just poke you, like you snap. And they don't mean snap like ah, they mean like snap isn't snap awake, snap movement. But uh, at that time in my life, I would go weeks without bathing. I would wear the same clothes for months on end. I made myself as disgusting as possible so people would never want to touch me, so people would never want to see me in a sexual way. Because, like, at the time, I still really considered myself defenseless. Like I hadn't put that stuff to rest in my head. Even though I wasn't, I still saw myself as wholly vulnerable to predation, and I was still living in a pretty hostile environment. So like I I wouldn't even call it like that's about as close to asexual as I think anyone can really get. Usually, I think there is unaddressed emotional problems if someone is saying, I am not attracted to either. I suppose it's possible, but like usually I'm going to say there's probably an unaddressed emotional problem there. Probably a whole host of them. And once again, it's like there's a social currency in it. So I see a lot of attractive young women who say I am asexual, and it's like, but you take time to make yourself like look desirable. You obviously have like care about your self image. You obviously want to be seen as attractive. To me, that's not like the actions an asexual person would take, but I'm obviously defining this very differently than they do in the modern context. Because I've heard them say, like, oh, I'm going on a date and I'm asexual. And it's like, obviously, we define this term in completely different ways. Um, and I do think it is a lot of social motivation is going into these labels. Like, I don't even think they are deriving a lot from the label. Like, people in mental health often seek out labels and then use that label to like construct themselves. They build their life off of this label. It's something that used to be extremely prevalent. And it still is with a lot of like personality disorders. You'll hear someone say, oh, I have this personality disorder, and then they use their whole life is constructed around this personality disorder, and it's used to explain away every negative and bad behavior. It's like, well, that's not really what it means. Um, but, you know, it is a strange thing to me. Not the mental health part. Like I even did that when I was younger, like trying to find an identity, trying to and like my own self was obviously hostile. Like I could not use myself as my actual identity because there's too much that I could not reconcile. So I had to seek outside of myself for an identity. And this causes massive internal discord because you're not being honest with yourself. And anytime you are like lying to yourself on fundamental levels, you can continue to do it. And some people do it their whole lives. But it does cause tremendous amounts of internal stress and unhappiness. I would recommend against it. Like I would say you would probably be better off poor and at ease mentally than wealthy and at conflict with your identity, because it is a difficult thing. But I do, back to the topic of sexuality as an identity, it does sort of bother me when I see people claiming all these things as a way of gaining importance, like using it as a tool, because like with myself, obviously sexuality has come up a lot in my videos because it is a massive part of my life, from severe like abuse and how that manifested into adulthood, and that is a very important part of my life. Like if I'm going to be honest about things, I have to talk about that because it's taken up so much of my life. In fact, the other day, like when I was talking about it, saying it out loud really made me take pause as to how I live my life. I had never said any of that out loud, and talking about it, it made me uncomfortable. However, I have all this stuff, like in my eyes, I see is wrong with me. I see it is unfortunate that it happened. And all this real negative stuff is hardwired into my brain. A lot of stuff that is not nice. I am turned on by women who are mean to me in certain ways. Like, I am turned on by pain. I am turned on by humiliation. Like me or someone else. And if it's someone that's not into humiliation, like you can't do that to them. That's fucking abuse. Like you're going to twist their mind. It's extremely unhealthy to like involve, in my opinion, especially because I'm talking about, for a normal person, it's kind of extreme stuff. And like the how can I phrase this? For my actual personality, like I am attracted to dominant and controlling women. That turns me on. I like that like feature, and I think it is also probably unhealthy, but nevertheless, that that is the way it is. But for me, meeting people out on the street, I can't just strike up conversations and form a relationship like the way a normal human being can. I have to make sure this person has all this other shit wrong with them before we can go even down that road. Because, like, if I start a relationship with somebody and we start having like deep feelings for each other, well, then they're gonna find out like sexually you can't satisfy me in any way, and like I am just performing for you. I feel no sexual connection to you. And I've been through this with every relationship I've been in, and like two of them did turn me on very, very much, but they wouldn't believe that. Uh, that was very strange. Like I like the main relationship I was in, like nobody has ever turned me on more, and she still doubted it, and it's weird because like it's still in my head, like how excited she would make me, but she didn't believe it, or saw it differently. But so I see it as like all this stuff is wrong with me, and I have to take all these precautions. I have to do all of this stuff. And it's not something I think that people should really go around talking about. Like it has a time and a place, and it has areas where it's acceptable to talk about it. But it's not something you want to run around and just bring up to everyone, because you're going to make a lot of people uncomfortable and you're going to make people look at you weird. It's just not something that belongs, in my opinion, like out in the world. You don't want like, billboards of like hardcore humiliation and domination on the highway. It's just not something that in general I take a pretty extreme view towards this. Like I out in society, I generally think everything should be G rated, no higher than PG, no higher than like kissing and hugging and stuff. And even that, you don't want to get gratuitous. Everything out in society is as if a child was watching it. That is generally how I view things. But I am also fine with very, very extreme things. It's just they have to be in their place. And those things are like oil and water. They really shouldn't mix, even with like, voyeurism, public humiliation fetishes, and stuff like that. Like, you can't You can't involve people without their consent if it's getting you off. Uh, like that is my opinion. You start getting into the line of abuse, even if they don't feel abused. Uh, you are abusing them. Like women, I would know would do stuff like go to the door and like the towel would drop getting a pizza from a delivery boy. I know women that would do this. Very attractive women, very attractive women. And it's like, yeah, but you're fucking with that dude's head. It's not gonna probably ruin his life or anything, and I'm sure he's glad it happened, but nevertheless, like you're messing with his head without his consent, and that's what bothers me about it. So I got all this stuff wrong with me, and I see people taking it and wearing it like a badge and being like silly about it, and they have none of the depth that comes with it, none of the pain that causes it. Like to them it's just something they say, and it confuses people even more. And I don't, that's what I really don't like about it, is it's further confusing people. It is taking something that it's unfortunate that it has to be. Like from my experience, anyone that's gay wishes they could be straight. Anyone that is truly bisexual wishes they could be straight. Women are slightly different. Women bisexuality is more acceptable. With guys, it is completely unacceptable. Even in the modern sense, the guys that say they're bisexual still don't want a cop to sucking dick. Uh, like it just makes them uncomfortable. Like kissing other guys. Like I always go to that one because I know how uncomfortable it makes people. And if you have no attraction to men, even if you have an attraction to men, like kissing a guy goes, that's like, ooh, I don't know. I don't know. Um, it's to where I'm like, so much is wrong with me. It doesn't even touch me. It literally means nothing to me. But to them, it means a lot. So that's, I guess, what kind of bothers me about it is they're taking something that is basically trauma based and doing like a happy little elves version of it. And I think that further confuses people because then you have people that do have that stuff wrong with them, and they're looking at this guy saying he has that thing and he does not have any of the depth of knowledge that you would need to communicate about it. You know, I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm not trying to look down on people. Obviously, I'm going to have more wrong with me. Or I'm open to more things than just about anyone in the world. Uh, there's very few things where I'm like, no, one of the only ones is bondage. I can't be tied down. Uh, I can't do it. Even when I go in for surgery, they put me under and they strap me down, and I will still break the straps. They have to use these special straps because I'll break them. Like my body fights even in its sleep. If someone tries to touch me or do something, like it doesn't matter. I can't shut it off. My body will fight till the end, just on instinct. And so they have to use like these extreme forms of like I remember once I was in the dentist and they have to put me under to do the dentist stuff. And I remember this nurse grabbing my head and she's like, "You have to stop fighting us." Like I can remember seeing like there's like four girls and there's blood all over their like fucking things. And uh that's all I really remember is the girl saying, "Stop. You have to stop fighting us. This isn't important." But I'm about one of the most open people you'll find, and I'm not trying to be a prick about this stuff. It's just, like I said, I think it is alarming that you have people claiming it that have no association with it, and it misleads people. It is misguided in their self, and it misguides others. And that is the inherent danger, I guess. And I don't like the mixing of things. I think things need to stay separate. I don't think people need to know what your sexual preferences are, because like that's a long conversation with someone like me. Like I understand with most people it's like I like men or women, but with people like me, that's going to be a long fucking conversation, and that limits so many things that you now can't talk about around this person. Like that should stay in your personal life, behind closed doors, if you will, private property type of stuff. You know, even if it's a private party, it's still behind closed doors, and you shouldn't involve people without their consent. I don't know. Take it for what it's worth, I guess.